Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Goldfish Report. I'm your host and researcher, Louisa. Today is Sunday, October 30th, 2022. It's Goldfish Report number 940. And today we have a special guest returning to the Goldfish Report, a friend from down under, Tim Emslie. Tim, welcome back to the Goldfish Report. Good to see you.
You too. It's been a long time. I think, well, I just haven't been active, have I? So it's really good to be back on and to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're hoping we may have a drop-in guest. We may not. I'm not going to mention it unless it because it might not happen, but we'll see. Look, what on earth is going down there? Give us an update on how things are going in Australia. What on earth is happening?
Um, it's a bit hard to sort of really get your finger around exactly what's going on, except that obviously the globalists are still pushing their agenda, but it's almost like people are getting comfortable because they've settled back down after the whole virus thing came to pass after 2 years, and things are back to normal, even for people who didn't, you know, take the medicine, so to speak.
Mm.
It's pretty much back to life as normal for everyone. Um, there doesn't seem to be any indicators that threaten um, our way of life in a way that looked like it was going to happen over the last 2 years, but never eventuated. So
Mm, mm,
people are back out doing normal stuff, and it feels like everything's back to normal. But there's also that part of us here that are not trusting, because we know that if they want to really push something, they
mm,
can. But in saying that,
mm,
apparently there is legislation that has passed through certain laws that look pretty scary.
mm, mm,
And a lot of this information has come about very recently, that some new laws were put in that, if these laws were active in the last year and a half,
mhm,
it certainly would have been detrimental to those who didn't virtue signal and go and get their special medicines, so to speak. So, if there was to be some card that the globalists, through their puppets that operate within our system here in Australia, high up through corporations or through levels of governing, um, if something was to come up, it wouldn't take much for that to come in, and everyone who hasn't had the sacred special medicine
mm.
would be running for the hills like the Jedi in the dark times.
So what about
Yeah.
the effects from those who've been vaccinated? What about the death rates? Is this being hidden? I've seen video coming out of Australia. I believe it was Australia, where they were just people were actually passing a cemetery, and there was just, the row of fresh graves was shocking. What are
I
you
haven't
finding?
I haven't seen that video, but I've heard, I've sort of scanned through some, like a there's an old doctor with grey hair. Can't think of his name, but he does statistics
Hmm.
in his videos, and he's comes from a very he's very level-headed in his approach, and yeah, he says that even in New Zealand, there's reports coming in, from curators, etc., that there seems to be a noticeable, a higher rate in comparison to what the stats were for even 2017 or 18 or 9. The stats seem to be a lot higher. Um, Obviously, they probably haven't been really put out yet through the media for someone to go and look at online. That'll probably happen in the in the next few years unless they decide to corrupt the books and don't write down what they actually are, so that it appears that everything's normal. That's what I think is going on with that.
Mhm.
Um, there are like we are getting stuff like people through, say, um, media. Um, there might be a report through someone will type on social media that someone just suddenly had a sudden heart attack and collapsed in a shopping center.
Mhm.
Now, that does happen. So you could say, well, that's not out of the ordinary. Um, but then again, it's like,
Perfectly normal.
yeah, maybe it's telling us something. I know of people that I know personally that I either work with or I just know, and you bump into them in the supermarket and they tell me they're going to see a heart specialist for myocarditis. And I asked them which special medicine they had, and it's usually the one that starts with P,
Mm,
um,
mm,
that causes that one. Even my father has had rapid heartbeat issues from time to time. One time he was in the middle of cooking dinner when I was visiting, and then he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And I went looking for him, going, "This is very strange." And I found him lying down in the dark. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "My heart's just doing funny stuff right now." And he never had stuff like that before, even though there is a history of heart stuff in the family. I've also been to a specialist myself because I've over the last year and a half, I worked out what I had because I was getting on there telling healers, "What's checking with my heart? Can you see what's going on? I need a diagnosis. I need a name. I need someone who's, intuitive to see what it
mhm,
is, because
mm.
I'm not getting." Um, Even though I went the mainstream approach, which I did, I spoke to a specialist over the phone, and she said, "Before you come in and see me in person, just tell me what the symptoms are." And I said, "Well, I lie there at night." And by the way, this passed a long time ago, and I've only had it mildly one other time since, but it was pericarditis. Pericarditis is different to myocarditis. Myocarditis is scarring of the heart, which can injure the heart, which means that you can have more ongoing trouble
Mm.
down the road, short term, long term, whatever. So it's almost a sign of what could be coming for many. Whereas the pericarditis is inflammation of the heart from a virus. She said it could have been caused by the flu, it could have been caused by um, COVID virus, or it could have been caused by the spike protein of the virus, or the spike protein from the engineered vaccine for COVID. So obviously, I've at the time, it sort of came on around the time that many people were orchestratedly going and getting all their shots. And so I was walking around. You walk past someone in the shopping center, and if they're sweating or something, you can smell people's body smell. You can smell, yeah, their sweat. So not
Did
not
you?
that that was the case all the time, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm sure I was receiving it.
Well,
Um,
they're reporting it does shed. And did you have the special juice? So you don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
um,
If you don't want to answer, that's okay.
I, yeah,
It's not
I
important.
did it. No, I'll say it. I didn't, because anyway, we're calling it special juice. We're not calling it something else, so I can say that I haven't had it. Um, which is the truth. And it's even caused sort of issues in my family.
Yeah, personality
Because
changes. I mean, I've had arguments with they just
yeah,
there's something really going on. There's like personality change, or not necessarily, well, some personality, but it's almost like there's uh, a recalibration of I guess, a moral compass and a recalibration of like um, I would say uh, reconstructing events, or maybe I would say memory has changed. Like memory of events have changed according to some sort of redirected moral compass. I don't know. It's the only way I can say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because even though I haven't had it, it's almost like you're living in the reality world surrounded by the majority who have, if they are
Yeah.
a majority, and so they're deciding what the reality is, and if like you said, they're
Mm,
all sort of the narrative that their reality that they're looking back on is different to what mine is, and is as an individual, and
mm,
yet I feel like I'm living in their world, which is really interesting because it's all around me and I have to work with it. I can't just go be in a place and surrounded by
mm,
people who have done the same thing as me. So in a sense, it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying. Even like I've got family members who they just seem dulled down, and they don't even want to talk about it anymore, and they just want to move on. But it's like cognitive dissonance. It's like I'm seeing it as a denial, because, like you said, the compass. If they had to go look in the mirror and question the morality of the ethics of what
mm,
they've done,
mm,
and that it's like belonging to that majority and feeling like, well, everyone else in the majority that did that, therefore it's safer to belong in the majority, and that must be the reality, because
mm,
if I go and question that reality and pull myself out, that's too scary of a place to go. So before anyone can even, they just cut the conversation straight down. And I guess I have to admit, though, I probably have thrown through social media some information towards
mm,
some of my family and close friends and stuff that have, and they get cranky about that, and then they're
mhm.
like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I haven't seen you for a few years. You're coming to town, are you?" And I'm like, "Yes." So you want to catch up? Yeah, yeah, I'll catch up with you, but I don't want to talk about any. I don't want to talk about any of this anti-vaccine stuff. And I'm like, "Whoa, okay." I might have sent that stuff to you on social media, but when I was planning on catching up, I wasn't really. That wasn't going to be the focus of my interaction, because
What's done
that's
is
the
done.
worry stuff. That's the worry stuff you do online,
Yeah,
where the articles come in and you just go in and you just go share, share, share to
sure.
like 20 people. And I guess it just upsets those who are not questioning it, because they just see it as um, like when someone's against a bunch of protesters who they obviously see as on the other side, the total opposite
Mm.
wing to what your thought is, which is unfortunate. Um, but
Let me ask you this,
yeah,
does has there been, like, for jobs, is there still, are they still requiring vaccine mandates? Or do you need to show vaccine passes to do certain things, travel, buy food, transport? And what is the situation with your oil and gas down there too? It's 2 different questions, so sorry.
okay. So to answer the first one around the whole job situation, the answer is yes, no. It's really, really weird because they've backed off, and even the governments have said we're quite a while ago. I can't think of when it was. I think it was back in March or something.
Mhm,
March, I don't know. It might have been earlier than that. But they said they're dumping all requirements.
mhm,
But then they said in the same sentence on TV press conference, um, the government's dumping the mandates except for in aged and disability care. So they were the only two, and they've just been dumped about a month ago.
mhm.
Especially in the ACT, they've dumped that.
What's that?
Um, so the people who work in aged care and disability care. So
Okay, okay, no
people
problem.
that go around someone's house and help someone who's in a wheelchair, um, shower them, dress them, cook for them.
Mhm,
People who disabled, like someone who's had a stroke or whatever,
mhm,
or people like older people who are in aged care homes.
mhm.
Like they got dementia or they're just really really old, and there's nurses and that. Um, yeah, up until about a month ago, those two groups you still needed to um, be um, have those shots, but then the government's um, the premiers of every state had a Zoom meeting about a month ago with the ooh, with the head of that's just my
Yeah, it's
yeah,
okay, you
it's
could just
back.
keep talking, that's alright. You alright? Okay.
Yeah, they had a big meeting, and all states around
Mhm,
Australia
mhm.
had a meeting their own uh, states and decided that
We
they
lost
would.
your speaker. The speaker on the
Okay,
speakerphone setting. I mean, I can still hear you, but it's, not as good as it was just a moment ago. Just take your
right, I'll
time.
take it back again. Sorry,
Okay, no problem, take your time. It's when we
that's the
doing
Bluetooth
yeah, that oh, yeah, yeah, I see, okay, no problem. Yeah.
now.
Yeah, there you go. You're back.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good now.
I yeah. I'll try not to have that happen.
Well, it's okay, it only happened momentarily, it's alright.
Yeah.
It's how it is, we're all trying to get through.
Yeah. So I have noticed, like, some companies, big corporations said we'll do whatever the government does, but the government premiers, like, they what I don't know what you call them over in there again. Yeah, called yeah, your
Legislators,
leaders of each
yeah,
state.
legislators,
Yeah.
traders,
Yeah. So
traders.
yeah.
That's the real name. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So they said um we as government are not mandating it, but it's up to private corporations to do as
Mhm,
they please. So they made a recommendation,
mm,
but they didn't force them to
mhm,
return back, which is
uh,
interesting.
interesting.
So what we have in workplaces is people
Mm,
will go to work somewhere, and there's always an induction. I'm pretty sure you have a very similar system. You go to work somewhere, they sit a person down who hasn't worked in that with that company,
mhm,
as
mhm,
different companies coming together to work as clients and subcontractors,
mhm,
especially in the engineering, uh, type engineering, building, and mining industry, which I tend to work in. They sit down and say, we're sort of they just assume that everyone's had it, but they know it's sort of wrong to isolate, and it's almost like you don't dare ask someone if they haven't.
mhm.
And yet they
Interesting.
expect everyone to sort of have had it, or they treat everyone as they have had it. And they may even have documentation pages that they flick through, and they say, yep, we need to see um, that they'll need to see that um, people had passports or something. And then when it actually comes to them actually viewing those specific things, um, they they don't actually ask for it, and so it's almost like if you're going into a nightclub, right? It's going back quite a few years for me, but just to give people an analogy, if you're going into a nightclub or some venue where you have to show ID on entry to show that you're 18 and that you're allowed to go in there, it's almost like they've forgotten to ask for the ID, and they're just looking at people and going, yeah, that person's 18. It's a bit like, that's another way of explaining it. So I think there's a lot of people out there who haven't had anything, who obviously just go and everyone's treated the same. But people are very, very quiet about they don't want to go, oh, hey, I haven't had it, because then they might have to be, if you speak too loud, people, then someone will have to make a phone call, and then there will be some big thing, and then it'll go through legislation within companies or something. So everyone just shuts up and everyone sort of turns the other cheek, sort of thing.
Mm.
Does that explain it?
I mean, are there any protests? Is there any riots? Is there, I mean, not
Um,
everybody, as you said, everything's pretty much gone back to normal. And then just what
there is
about the
protests.
status with the oil and gas? Yeah.
Yeah, there is protests going on. So um, the Aussie Cossack, um, the Russian, the Russian Cossack, the Aussie Cossack. You probably heard of him, Simeon.
Okay.
He has a channel. He's a Russian Australian, and he's just got out of prison for naming
Mm.
someone high up as a pedophile. And he was just released from jail. So I can't think of the other names, but there's some other people like who are in a movement that's parallel to um, I can't think of a name. The Queensland
Mm.
politician woman, Pauline Hanson. So politician in Queensland called Pauline Hanson, the redhead.
Okay.
Um, she she has the guts to say what it is, and she's coming from the right space. A lot of people don't like her though, but it's like,
Mm.
you know, she would be the equivalent of the Republican sort of Trumpy type
Okay. Okay.
ideology.
Mhm.
Um, so she's even been to prison herself. She was pushed in there because
Mm.
she was a threat. So it's there's some anti-globalist protests going on. I haven't participated in it because I don't feel personally it has any effect anyway. I'm not saying
Mhm.
don't do it to those
Mhm.
who do it, but
Mhm.
I just know that there's other means, and I also understand, the bigger picture with the white hats and this underground movement of people in high places that aren't globalists that are um, taking actions as well.
Mhm.
So protests is just another form of virtue signaling the opposition of that which we don't agree with, and I don't see the point of going. Although back in February, I did go to the one in Canberra where they used the weapon against us. Um,
What was that?
they use the LADAR. I think it's called the LADAR system. So
Oh,
not
right, right.
radar, but
Yeah.
LAD. It's this
Sound. Yeah.
big flat, yeah, big flat box on
Mhm.
top of
Sonic. Yeah.
federal police
Mhm.
units. Yeah, and people got burnt lips and stuff. I got out of there because I noticed something felt wrong, and
Mm.
phones weren't working, and it just felt toxic. And
Mm. Mm.
I just evacuated. People were lying down. It was really weird. Like people were
Wow.
having, like it was like mini medical episodes, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm looking up at that thing,
You mean like they
and
were
they were
having
using
like
it to
the
speak it. It
cardiac
has a very
arrests?
loud thunder, like the
Mm.
way it pushes sound out. It's like
Mm.
those ambulances and fire engines that have that woofer. Woo.
Mm.
So you can feel
Mm.
it as well for
Mm.
the deaf
Mhm.
deaf people who are driving.
Mm.
They can feel it,
Mm.
and they go, "Oh,
Mm.
there's a police car."
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
but
Mm.
gas and fuel. So we've just it's been up pretty high. It's like unleaded has been hanging around $1.73 to $2.20 a litre. When you go back 2 years or so, there were times where it was around, say, dollar 50, and even as low as $1.20. I think one time it might have got back below $1. Because I remember you go back 3 or 4 years, we were paying 89 cents a litre.
Wow.
Now it's
Mhm.
$2.20 or something. We're talking 95.98. Um,
Mhm.
UL 95 and 98.
Mhm.
And then you got the fuel mix with the ethanol, um, which is cheaper, but it doesn't apparently make you, it's not as good for your engine. But there
Oh,
is some stuff in the media that the media, like the mainstream media, like Channel 7, Channel 9, they're pushing this
mhm,
signaling
mhm,
now to prep everyone to
mhm,
normalize it
mhm,
so people can expect it, so that people
mhm.
just bite the bullet. They're saying,
Hold on a second. Hold.
prices of fuel to hike, and they got a picture of the Bowser, and they got like a, like a stock
Mm,
market graph going up and up and up and up, like
right.
Bitcoin going up
Mm. Let me just
on the
ask you
picture.
to repeat that. What was it per liter?
Um,
The average was two something, just an
um,
average, just an average.
$1.73 to 2.20, depending on where. A
Okay,
lot of
so
people use the app to find the cheap stuff, but yeah, $1.70 to
okay.
2.20.
All right,
If
I'm trying to
you're if
put this
you're on a
into
major highway,
yeah, I'm
hey,
trying to put this into context for excuse me. I'm trying to put this into context for our listeners in America and other parts of the world that are going to be listening. I'm going to just screen share this really quick because I wanted to share with everybody. That's
yeah,
3.78 or 3.79 liters per gallon compared to US price. And when I put that in the calculator, we get 6.55 a gallon. So to us, that's $6.55 a gallon. That's high. That's pretty high.
yeah, we were already paying a
And
lot
that was on the
more
low
than you
side you
guys
gave me.
before
Right.
COVID.
Yeah.
So even go back 3 or 4 years, go back to 2018,
Hmm.
we were paying a higher rate as a nation than you guys anyway.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've
Hmm.
heard of other countries where it's quite cheap. Like, I can't remember where now, but there were some countries where they were paying bugger all. But looking at this on,
Hmm.
as you're probably aware, Saudi Arabia is not going to drop the price, and it's upset
Hmm.
the Biden administration, which is indicating that maybe Saudi Arabia is joining BRICS, or they're sort of more moving on to the side of Russia, because we know what this big conflict is really about. It's about who runs the planet financially,
Hmm.
and who has control of all the resources that
Yeah.
back all the currencies and money. And you can call it a Russia-Ukraine conflict, but really, Ukraine's a proxy, and it's about the globalists operating, with this proxy, and a puppet regime in the Ukraine, while the
Hmm.
media representing the Western world out of NATO and the G7 countries, including Australia and all the colonies and
Hmm.
empires. It's
Hmm.
like the Great Western Empire, which is like the British Empire, which was like the Roman Empire, and Russia's like, well, we're Russia, we're sovereign, we're not part of the Roman Empire, we do things our way. And like the globalists and the Rothschilds and all those powerful people who are manipulating the politicians in our
Hmm.
West are saying,
Hmm.
we want you to give in, stand down, and we're going to take all of Russia, and we're going to turn you into Europe, and we're just going to exploit you. And Russia's like, no, we're not going to let that happen. So that's how I see it.
Hmm.
I see it that
Well,
all
because
all Russia's doing is protecting its sovereignty, because
hmm
it does not want to be owned by the same oligarchs,
right.
because the oligarchs in Russia don't want to be owned by the oligarchs in the West. So who's more evil than the other? I don't know, but you got to think back in World War II, the Romanov
Mm,
family in
mm,
Russia was killed off by the Rothschilds. They were assassinated,
mm,
and all their wealth was stolen and extorted, because that's how you take someone's wealth. You go for the head, and then you cut the head off that snake of that group, and then
right.
you steal their wealth. And so whoever the powers that be are in Russia, they're not on the same side as in the Western Empire under NATO. And so that's what it's really about. And I think the more countries that start moving to Russia, I think we're going to see that the collapse of the West will be imminent. But it's also, like, as you know,
Mm,
engineered collapse.
right.
Those behind it actually want
Right.
to collapse this their
Right.
own side anyway. It's not like they care about you and me and everyone
Mm,
else, because we're
right.
just the cattle at the bottom, aren't we?
Exactly, but the BRICS alliance was formed for this excuse me, for this purpose, and that was to really kind of form an alliance, create the best way to conquer these globalists is to make their money obsolete. And so
Yeah,
this is what's happening, as you're saying, and that you can see this with Putin. Having a gold-backed digital currency and ruble, and of course with the Chinese yuan as well, which happened to be dropping recently, but that's okay. It's it has to come down. We've been talking about this global currency reset for a long time, and it was imminent, and it was all had to be all these events that are happening had to be orchestrated in order to make that happen. So when
yeah,
all this money that they stole, all this wealth that they have accumulated will be worthless once the money changes, because then try to exchange that money, right? And that will not
yeah,
happen on the new quantum financial system. And it's true that Russia is also what he refers to this oligarchy that you're referring to. He refers to them as Nazis, who are still, their home base hotbed is in Ukraine. That's where they operate, and that's where this money laundering and child trafficking occurs, as you know. So this is interesting. We do see these changes happening. I think your assessment's pretty spot on, and about the power struggle that is going on. And it's interesting, though. I mean, just again to put into comparison for our viewers here in America. So I really should have announced this in the beginning of the program. Tim's in Australia. I'm in the United States, and we were hoping that Steve would join us, but I'm not quite sure if he's able to, who's over in Austria. And the wonderful thing is that right now we're on two different continents in different hemispheres of the world. So, but we're getting the same. We're seeing the same picture, but we're looking for it. We're trying to use discernment, and we're trying to find the truth. It's going to be crazy. You've heard, of course, that Trump's going to be arrested. What do you think of that?
yeah. I heard it was going to happen on Wednesday, Thursday, just gone, and I think it still could happen.
Mhm.
Um, I'm also aware that some things that we hear end up not coming true. Like we heard that Xi Jinping was under house arrest. We've heard numerous of times that Putin and the rest of them all were
Mhm.
all over in the bunkers. And then I found out later that sometimes they're feeding out this information as a
Yeah.
distraction to
Mhm.
something else. So it's interesting that they said Trump was about to be arrested, and now
Yeah.
Elon Musk has just taken over Twitter, sacked the
Mm,
two people in charge,
mm,
and all the people with the codes.
mm.
And now the elites are basically threatening Musk, because I'm
Right.
wondering, and I ask the question, I ponder in addressing this, given what's been going on about fact checking to control the narrative by those powerful sponsors, the globalists who
Mhm.
need people to basically follow a narrative, yeah, yeah, for their agenda. So if Elon Musk, like, good guy, bad guy playing the good guy, I don't really know the true answer to that.
Mhm.
But it would be nice if he's actually done what he's done, so that certain authorities operating secretly, who are white hats, could now potentially access data through Elon Musk opening the door for them by buying it, to look back and scratch around in Twitter and find evidence of um, criminality through,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
They're panicking.
financial, see what
They're panicking.
parties are actually behind this, which could then be provided later, yeah, in some
Mhm.
sort of um,
Tribunal or
court of
something. Mhm.
tribunal of crimes
Mm.
against humanity, through manipulation of the masses, through control of mass media like that. So, is this what is about to happen? And so there's that. I mean, astrologically, I've been watching astrologers that are
Mhm.
talking about the different energies at play and how things are starting to move for exposure and bringing stuff into the light based on all that. So the other thing that's happening is in January or February, Prince Harry is going to reveal his book. And so I asked the question, I wonder if he's got that book under lock and key somewhere, very protected, because is he going to reveal? Because you might have heard about the Nostris quatrain that predicted the death of Queen Elizabeth in September 2022.
Yeah, I have.
You heard that, and it said that the king will not remain king for long. He will be abdicated, and a person who thought they would not be king will become king. So that's sort of saying that something's going to happen to King Charles, and so we can imagine Prince Edward with
Mm,
Jeffrey Epstein.
mhm, mm.
The what's his name? Who's the grey-haired guy with the Jimmy Savile?
Oh
Jimmy
God.
Savile, who's dead, but he's known as a really terrible pedophile
He was like
in
a
that club, and
he was like another Epstein, so to speak, I think,
yes, yes, and
in a way, I guess.
like there's plenty of photos of him with Charles, and so
Oh
I
yeah.
think
Yeah.
Jimmy Savile, Prince Edward, Jeffrey Epstein, and this whole trail, and then the Lady Diana and Prince Harry writing stuff. I think something big's going to come from that, which
Mhm.
may turn the public and some other stuff that comes out like Julian Assange type. You know,
Mm,
someone gets hold of stuff and someone
mm,
speaks out
mhm,
and tells the truth, and everyone like riots on the street, whatever. People turn
mhm,
against um, Ed Charles, and then he's forced through that because it becomes so big that the media can't
mm,
try and whitewash it, so they have to follow it,
mm.
which will
Yep.
cause.
Mhm.
All
Okay.
right, I'm back. I
Yeah.
pressed the key thing long
Mm.
enough to not go on
Yeah.
speaker,
Right. Right.
which would result in him abdicating, and
Mhm.
then for whatever reason, which we don't know yet, Prince William can't take it. Haven't worked that bit out yet. It could be
Mhm.
a number of things,
Mhm.
but then would it be? Could it be? It could be a number of people, but I'm thinking it could be Harry
Mm.
somehow takes it because he's the one who tells the truth and exposes it.
Right.
Somehow
Mm.
people want him because I don't know. Like I don't know whether he's
Mm.
a
Yeah. Mm.
good guy operating, pretending to be a bad guy, pretending to be the good guy, or whether he's
Mhm.
actually just another distraction. You know, the good cop, bad cop.
Mhm.
I don't really know, but
Mhm.
who knows? I mean, and these
Exactly.
powers that be are splitting apart. That people are taking different sides. Russia's really, you know, split the cake in half, and everyone's deciding over time now, over the next however long period of time, which side they're going to be on, and people are going to countries is
Mm.
going to start jumping ship, and these
Mm.
globalists, people are going
Mm.
to walk away. It's all going to fall apart for them, as you know.
Well, it it's
Yeah.
kind of like the corruption was so it metastasized. It infiltrated every country. This and should we say Bolshevik Khazarian infestation on the planet, and it served their purpose, but it certainly did nothing for humanity but turn us into slaves. And it's time for us to be liberated, planetary liberation, and we've talked about that. And so I definitely
Mm.
see there's going to be major things coming. We're being told that we've got like 25 days left of diesel fuel, and things. What's kind of shocking is that things in America for most people is kind of business as usual. Although they have dropped the mandates here, the job mandate here, um, for most companies, but not everybody. I mean, actually, most of the I would say most liberal institutions, definitely academia, which is a very very unfortunate thing. Because I could have easily gone back to work in academia, but they are requiring full vaccination. I'm not going to do that. Excuse me. And Many companies still are as well. So it's still quite serious here. And unfortunately, most people still haven't gotten they haven't really woken up yet. And not only that, but then there's these people who are trying to testify. Dr. McCullough yesterday just was had his credentials stripped from him, so he had his medical license taken away, so he can't practice medicine any longer at this time. So they are trying to you know, clamp down on people, increase the censorship. But as you said, Elon Musk took over Twitter. We'll see what happens. It is hard to peg him. A lot of people don't trust him, and there's a lot of reason why. I mean, when you walk around doing this, then you know who your allegiance is to, right? I do this, I know who I'm praying to, but this is theirs. They pray to a different God than ours, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a lot of doppelgangers out there. I think when you mentioned Xi Jinping, I have definitely heard that there was doubles, that they have doubles, and not only that, they just have the masks that people can wear. It's just, they make them so good in Hollywood these days, and it's all an alliance. Xi, Putin, Modi, Trump, they're all in this alliance, and I'm not trying to be a completely hopeless optimist, but
Yeah.
I am optimistic. I think we're going to go through a big problem. And the native indigenous cultures, and maybe you have heard this in your area, have predicted that there was this great cleansing that was going to happen on the planet. The Hopis had predicted it, that when they saw the blue kachina, that represented the sign that the cleansing was coming. So whatever, who are they? Were they an indigenous culture that was here to do the same thing? I don't know, at some point, because they were infiltrated. Where we have to wait until we see things manifest with our own eyes, like you're saying. And um, but just for the American population, by the way, that range that Tim gave us from 73 to 220 is in our comparison in dollars and gallons is 656 to 836 per gallon. Just imagine that, folks. And yes, you were paying more, but that's huge. That's astronomical. I mean, are people adjusting their way of life? And tell me about your food and food supplies. Are you having trouble finding any food? Is it just pretty much, as you said in the beginning, business as usual, or are you finding shortages anywhere? Has there been any reports of that?
Yeah. So to answer the first one about the fuel, I've mitigated basically when I knew it went up.
Mm,
I was thinking, geez, this is going to affect my ability to do these massive drives I do because,
mm,
I got mum and dad. Um, I'm working,
mm,
like I've been working out of Penrith in Sydney,
mm,
um, currently near Lithgow. I've just been working up in Childers, up in Queensland, west of
mm,
Bundaberg. Mind you, all big dams that hold water
uh-huh,
because there's all this
mm,
construction and upgrade stuff going on. But
mm.
um, with the distance, and I've got mum and dad, and I've got my little dog who's now 17 years old, and
Oh, wow.
I don't think he's got much longer, sadly. Which is something I have to get. So I'm watching my parents grow old, my dog grow old, all at the same time, which is a
Mm,
very bizarre thing to be a part
mm,
of.
mm,
And and knowing that I'm away a lot
mm, mhm,
working because I have to be away to have money, and so I miss a lot of time with them, and even with my dog, like being away that much of his life, like whereas other people have their dog by their side 24/7, but
some
I've always
do.
gone away and come back. So I
Mhm,
think I've got this guilt about that. But anyway,
mm,
so
mm,
a 7 hour drive for me,
mm,
um, to fill up is now, costing a return trip. It's getting up, at least around 250 to $300
mm,
for such a trip. And
mm,
in the past, that was how much someone paid rent a week or a fortnight in the past. So it's almost like doing a big road trip is almost like, well, it's like you're paying. It's like getting to the point where it's like paying your rego or something just to do that
Jeez.
trip.
Wow.
But
Mm,
we've got these apps that you can, it shows
Mhm,
you where the cheap fuel is. And
mhm,
what I might do is, if I want to fill the tank up and I know it's 30 cents per litre cheaper, or even up to, I found 50 cents. They have a special 50 cents cheaper than anywhere
mm,
else.
mhm, mm.
So if
Good
you
for
need,
you. Good for
if
you.
it's 30 k's away to get there, 30-kilometer drive to get there, like
Right.
a 20-minute drive to
Mhm,
get there, I'll go and fill up. I'll put $5 worth in or
mm,
something at the expensive place so I know I can get there. And then I'll do the 20-minute drive to
mhm,
get the cheap stuff, because usually
mhm,
I'm going on a big drive that's going past in that
mhm,
direction anyway.
mhm,
And so at the end of the day, when everyone gets their pay from work, their salary or their wages,
mhm,
and I just don't look at it. I put away what I can. I pay my loans and stuff.
mhm,
You know, I make sure I pay all my dues that I have to do, my
mhm,
responsibilities,
mhm,
financial responsibilities.
mhm,
I get them out of the way, pay all them,
mhm,
and then whatever's left, I don't look at it and put a value on it, like, oh, that's sitting there, and now if I go on this drive, I'm going to blow it. I just don't look at what's left, and I just do it anyway, because I'm not going to change my way of life because they're doing this to us. So I just continue to do it,
mhm, mhm.
and whatever's left is left, and then I deal with it.
Right.
And then,
What about inflation? I mean, the cost of food, the cost of, is it, what about supply? Have you noticed any shortages there?
um,
Or?
I there are some shortages, but they might be for 4 days, but then they're usually replenished, and
Mhm,
it might be a certain product or something. But yeah, some foods have gone up. But I've been fortunate that I'm away
mhm,
with work more than I'm at home, so I
mhm,
might be away, for 14 days and then back
mhm,
for two or something,
mhm,
or three or whatever. And so I've only got 2 days where I'm throwing my own money around. The other time when I'm away, I've got a work credit card. So my breakfast, lunch, and dinner is paid for, and that can be from a takeaway store or a restaurant, or I can go
mhm,
into the supermarket and buy foods to take out to work on site. It's how whatever the go is. So I'm not really noticing it, because I'm fortunate
mhm,
enough to
mhm,
have a job where my
mhm.
meals are provided and accommodation while I'm away,
Jeez.
um,
Everybody needs
far
to move
away,
to
like,
Australia. Boy, oh boy. They're tough on
yeah,
Americans. We don't get anything like that. Woo, unless you're
yeah.
unless it's a travel industry,
Well, it's like,
like
yeah,
an
it's like being
airline,
in the
like a
mines.
mm,
I'm sure the drillers and stuff that go up to Alaska,
mhm,
up there out in the middle of nowhere, while they're away on the big oil rigs, I'm pretty sure they're getting their meals provided
mhm.
as well.
Well, let's talk about your work for just a second because you mentioned mining and all of that. And
Yeah,
what's really interesting is that this is really what's going to be backing our new financial system is every country's precious metal reserves rather, and other types of reserves, natural raw materials. So in what you do is you take sample cores of the earth, right? That's what the work that you do.
yeah,
And so what you're
yeah.
doing is you're and what they're looking for. Do you always know what they're looking for in those cores or you don't?
Um, I am not a geologist as such, or an
Mhm,
engineer,
mhm,
or an engineer and slash geologist, but I know enough about
mm,
what they're doing. So when it comes to all these dams that I'm working around that need
mm,
upgrading, some of it's to mitigate different levels of flooding, and it's hypothetical. They
mhm,
talk about the 100-year flood, they talk about the
mhm,
500-year flood, they talk about the 1,000-year flood, the 10,000-year flood, the 100,000-year flood. So obviously, in ancient times, the rhythm of the sun and the moon and the
mhm,
cosmos causes this cycle where we have wetter times, um, which is natural. I mean, that's another thing there to go into, but we won't. But some of these structures, these big dam structures, were built like 60, 70 years ago. And so based on modern engineering science and ideology,
Mhm.
they believe that if they get us to check, like, there's always surveying to see if there's been any movement. There's survey points around these structures that are built
Mhm.
to see, it's full of water right now. Is it moving? Is it leaking? Is there, like,
Mhm.
um, fractures? We call them, I can't think of the word right now, but there's often faults, and
Mhm.
so all that water sitting in there behind the dam, and then
Mhm.
when they built it, they'd scratch it back and
Mhm.
then put the grout in and actually pump grout in to fill up all the little holes. But
Mhm.
that was 60 or 70 years ago. So they want to
Mhm.
know. We drill down to see what it's doing. So we provide the rock core samples from, say, the surface down to, they might tell us to go down to 80 meters deep, and it might be an inclined
Mhm.
hole on an angle. And then we're able to extract that information, and then they
Mhm.
look at it, they do tests on it, and they're able to see
Mhm.
if there's water leaking through, and if that means something where they back
Got
grout
it.
it, or
Got
but
it.
usually it's like they want to make the dam higher, not
Mhm.
not so much the water level,
Mhm.
but just make the dam higher so that in a flood event, and it does go much higher, and that water going over the top is an incredible amount, they need to know that that dam will stand and not implode and break and crack and fall over and cause a tsunami that's going to run down.
Got it.
So
Mhm.
they're doing a lot of work to cap. It's like a tooth that needs a cap. They
Mhm.
just want to put a higher amount on it, leave the level of the weir the same, but if it does flood, it can hold a lot more, and it still won't go up over the other parts of the dam.
Mhm.
It'll use the floodway, and it will still hold, and also put a heap of
Mhm.
concrete in behind the dams to make them stronger. So that's
Yeah.
basically what we're doing. I mean, that's just one aspect of what we do in
Mhm.
where I work. Um, but yeah, it's the scientists, the people who have been to university who look at this stuff, and they have labs and people and engineers that sit there and in offices, and they work all this out, and then they
Mhm.
plan on how they're going to build stuff or fix stuff.
Well, the
We're
reason I
just
was
the guys that,
asking
yep,
sorry, the reason I was asking is because, we have, that there's a lot of nickel projects in Australia, and there's, a lot of so I would assume that some of the coring, the sampling that they're doing is looking for those, minerals, and, um, there's let's see, what else do we have? I mean, it's all gonna back the new, currency, the new, digital currency. So this is,
yeah,
yeah, and so they're doing probably a lot of mining. So I presume that a lot of the samples you're taking is actually going towards, probably also helping to discover areas where they are suspecting there's really good deposits and reserves there. That's what I would think. So
yeah.
yeah. So
It's
so look it.
possible. I don't know if the ones
Yeah.
where I'm at the dams are actually like
Mm-hmm.
cross sharing with
Mm-hmm.
companies like that, because it's
Mm-hmm.
also on a river system.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I see.
the, like over in New Guinea, there's a mine site right up in the high mountains towards
Mm-hmm.
the Irian Jaya border, called Ok Tedi mine,
Mm-hmm.
and it's right on the top of a mountain. They found gold on the peak of the highest mountain,
Mm-hmm.
not the highest mountain in Antarctica, in New Guinea, but just this very, very high mountain, and it was full of gold. And so they turned it into a big open pit,
Mm,
and three rivers
mm,
begin from that very mine. And BP or BHP Bulletin or BP, I
mhm,
can't remember. They they owned it,
mm,
and they had a big catastrophe. They had some tailing dams, which is all the
mm,
waste product from the extracted,
mm,
gold or whatever,
mhm,
and then they dump all the raw material back, which is like a pulverized rock pile, like they would use for like land
mm,
for road base, like bluestone road
mhm.
base fill or something.
Yeah.
All sitting up there, and it all just washed away down the
Mhm.
hill, and then the indigenous people put in a big court case, and
Mm,
now that's owned by a
mhm,
national company.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, so
Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
in our remaining moments, why don't you, anything else that you wanna just, tell our viewers? And, I'm gonna be sending this to you, so you're gonna be uploading this to your channel. Is there
yes.
anything else that you wanna add? Anything to look out for, or concerns that you have, or advice, or anything that you have, for our viewers? Anything that we haven't talked about yet?
Um, I'm just trying to think. I know. I'm very like you. I'm very optimistic that things will
Mm,
soon be going in an interesting direction. There were some rumors about this global martial law to arrest the globalists, but I'm not keeping my fingers.
mhm,
Like, I don't want to be disappointed if that doesn't happen. That would be very, very nice if we're in the window
mhm,
for that. I'd like that to be so,
mhm,
but I'm also aware that if it doesn't happen, I don't want to be you know getting down about it because I was so hopeful and waiting
mhm,
for it. Because while you're waiting for
mhm,
that to happen, and you're not really a part of any agency that's contributing to the action of that,
mhm,
and you're more like an observer, there's no point getting disappointed if it doesn't happen. But
mhm.
I know it will happen. I just don't know if it's now or if it's like, is it
Right.
before the end of this year? Is it early
Mhm,
next year? Or, do we discover that it just goes into 2025 before
mhm,
something really happens? I really don't know. What I think's crucial is that these globalists who are trying to have this ultimate
mhm,
control over us, is that where do they draw the line before it gets too late?
mhm,
So I think we need to observe and watch for the signs
mhm,
that there are actions being taken um, to stop them from turning this planet into a total
mhm.
totalitarian situation, you know?
They've been trying to
So,
do this, global war. So, I mean, there's war and rumors of war and all kinds of things, and we may see a DEFCON 1 event, a standoff. In other words, I'm sure you've seen the same,
yeah,
information. You get people who send you information that that's probably likely going to happen. And there's going to be a lot of, people around the world that are going to be shocked if Trump is arrested. And we are expecting that to happen. A lot of changes, and ultimately, it's going to be very interesting nonetheless. And I think people down there will be shocked should they see a Trump arrest. Also,
do you think?
yesterday in South Korea, there
Yeah,
was this, major stampede they're calling. And, what's
yeah,
interesting is that everybody had cardiac arrest, which I find extremely suspicious, to suddenly everyone who's in a stampede to have cardiac arrest. I mean, the video that's coming out of there, you could see everybody doing chest compression CPR. So how could everybody have the same injury if it's not a 5G related, vaccine related kind of thing? So, it's be careful, gathering in large crowds, because uh, as we saw
could
in
be a
Wuhan.
target
Yeah,
experiment.
absolutely. As we saw in Wuhan, when this first happened, people were just, dropping like flies on video, whether it was real or not. There certainly was, legitimate reports of, um, 20 million China mobile phone users that just dropped off the face of the planet somehow.
Yeah, I remember that.
So
Yeah,
let's be careful, gathering in crowds and things like that. And but I do believe, I don't know what your opinion is about this, but I don't think there is a savior coming. I do think that we need to get up and do this ourselves. But it just looks like, when things are like business as usual, and how can it possibly really be when you have them denying and shaming vaxxers who are coming out saying that they've been damaged by the vaccine, and you can't talk about that, and you censor that. That's all being censored, so that doesn't get out and people don't find out what they don't want the jig to be up. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a little crazy, and I think people need to be just really careful, if they're going to be in crowds and what they're going to be doing. So, that part of the world right now, we've got China, doing provocations. And I mean, look, they've said, Taiwan's always been part of China. And but China's also, I'm sorry, Taiwan's also been a huge trafficking spot, and I think money laundering center, and that
Yeah,
had to be
it's
all cleaned
like
out
another
too.
Ukraine.
Right.
Um, I didn't know that. I always thought Taiwan was, yeah. I I had to re reconfigure
Hmm.
myself around that, because up until recently I've always seen that China being the CCP and,
Hmm.
another axis of evil,
Hmm.
controlling a population through that means, and then
Hmm.
Taiwan being democratic and liberated. But I'm also aware that maybe Taiwan's just been, even though the everyday people in Taiwan, lovely people, and they believe they're
Hmm.
living in a democratic freedom,
Hmm.
but there probably is an undercurrent of
Hmm.
the globalists manipulating it and using it the same way they have exploited and used Ukraine, even though
Hmm.
there's a population there going about their everyday as if things are normal.
Hmm.
So it's not about them. We're not saying they're all bad, not the people, but the system
Hmm.
that's abusing
Hmm.
them. That they're not really. Um, they don't even know
Hmm.
is happening. So
Well,
yeah,
the Ukraine was just attacking the Russian ships in the Black Sea, and as a result of that, Putin has stopped the shipment of grain. Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world, feeding 400 million people easily per year, and that's going to slow down. Putting all of these in, how asinine is it for all these countries to put these sanctions against Russia, and then Russia stops sending them grain and food from their controlled areas, and the Germans are suffering terribly. Oh, this is we're doing this. You're going to pay more. You're going to have less, and you're not. You're going to freeze to death this winter, and it's all to support Ukraine. I mean,
yeah.
I mean,
The
the people aren't
globalists
buying
have
it. The
they're
protests are crazy over there. They're not buying it.
yeah. It's the demolition of the old financial system by the globalists so they can implement their new world order system. But I'm pretty sure that this other group, and
Mhm.
probably that
The
Russia's
alliance.
with, is like, we're countering this. But of course they're going to make Russia look like the bad guy. But yeah,
Right.
these globalists are destroying Europe intentionally. They're not
Hmm.
going, oh, we thought we were having a go at Russia, but now it's
Hmm.
having a back effect on Europe. Oh, we
Hmm.
didn't see that. No, that's not the case at all. They um, are destroying Europe and the Western
Hmm.
system,
Hmm.
and using the distraction of, yeah, Russia as the focus of the cause of that, when it's not.
Hmm.
They're doing it on purpose. But yeah, I really hope that Putin and all that are aware of their
Hmm.
plan, and have
Hmm.
a ethical morality, that people are important enough um, to matter for something better. Like that woman who, I can't remember. It was an old black and white footage where
Hmm.
she's talking about humanity needs to go into a moral, ethical standing that's not
Hmm.
based on any particular faith or religion or anything, but out of reason and logic. And
Hmm.
when I say that, I don't mean just being in your head, but something that the whole world as a species
Hmm.
of mentally capable beings, that we do what we do and we've created
Hmm.
what we've created, we can all universally, just like mathematics is universal in the
Hmm.
cosmos, is come to an agreement of what a moral ethic, not saying
Hmm.
subjugating it into this particular religion or that religion or this ideology or this party, but just a moral,
Hmm.
ethical, unified understanding of
Hmm.
what's important to be a human, and
Hmm.
to be a valued,
Hmm.
um, living, breathing thing, that, and then the
Hmm.
financial system is based on that, that we're
Hmm.
all a part of that, and not used like cattle to exploit that
Yeah.
off us.